Greetings everybody, welcome to G4G here on YouTube. I am your host, Napalm Dawn, and I wanted to go ahead and do this video, put it out here tonight, as it's a video that I've been wanting to do for a long time, but not always in the iteration that you guys know. But first, we're going to get the background video going over here. This is an older video from about 3 years ago. I'm going to play the initial intro over here because I kind of do miss this one. And we're going to mute it. So what you see here is not footage from Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux. This is footage from the game before it was killed back in 2016. As you can see, there's a Blade quest going on over there. We only have 4 agent slots, and you will see in the video that I take quick action after quick action after quick action, and I believe the level cap was 14 at this time. This is a video that was called Hybrid Sting, which is a one of my more favorite names that I had come up with. And it is Anti-Venom and the Bruiser Suit version of Hybrid in PvP. So that's what you're seeing for the background video. Again, getting some things out of the way that I always have to do in the beginning of the video. This is not Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux or alpha footage or beta footage. This is the original game, and this is an old video of mine. And another thing that we need to get out of the way in terms of any questions about the timeline for the game, we're actually going to answer that one slightly in the middle of the video. You're just going to need to hold your horses. In terms of the question about will this appear on mobile, for the last goddamn time, we are not entertaining questions about whether or not this will appear on Android or iOS. So if you ask it in the comments, you're not going to get an answer, or you're actually going to get a rude answer from me, because I literally just did a video on why you will probably never see this on mobile, especially iOS. So for this video, you've probably seen from the title what it's going to be about. Before I jump into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about my history real quick, and then you can kind of see how it lines up with what we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the video, because there are some similarities here and some that I actually kind of didn't expect. So how I fell into Marvel Avengers Alliance, or how I got into this, is I started gaming very early in life. I actually started on a Atari 2600 and then moved on to an Atari 400, which had the tape deck, and you could actually load games onto the Atari 400 from a tape deck. You also, because it didn't have enough RAM in order for it to have an operating system, you had to put an operating system cartridge in, which was BASIC. And for several years in late elementary school and junior high, I actually was taking some computer classes in BASIC, because BASIC was platform agnostic. The BASIC you used on an Atari 400 also carried over to the Commodore PET and the Commodore 64 and so on and so forth. So BASIC was everywhere, which is interesting because BASIC, you would think that it would be. My then main computer would become a Commodore 64 with the 5 1/4 floppy drives, and the joystick ports were the exact same joystick ports as the Sega Master System and the Atari, so you could actually use an Atari joystick on a Commodore 64 if you wanted to. That was a long part of my youth, was heavy Commodore 64 usage over there. Many games that some of you guys may know, like the Ultima series, like Strategic Simulations, Gold Box series, ECA, as it was called at the time, Electronic Arts, is now EA, but it was called ECA at the time. Played a lot of the Bard's Tale series and Wasteland, which is important because that would go on to father Fallout. So the Fallout universe is actually Wasteland's universe, by the way. And then went to college. Late in college, got my first 486 66, and really got into things like the early shareware games like Descent and Doom 1 and Doom 2, Epic Pinball, One Must Fall, the robot fighting game, Duke Nukem. Played a lot of Duke Nukem with computer, calling computer and playing each other in my off-campus apartment, where we got two different phone lines, so my computer would call my roommate's computer, and we would play over Cali, I think it was, and then got into the original Diablo, kind of avoided Ultima Online, even though I was a big fan of Ultima 3, 4, and 5. Didn't like 6 that much because 6 was like mouse-based on the Commodore. It was rooted in the IBM instead of the Apple products. Very big into IRC in the late 90s, where I was in a lot of Whereas channels and, you know, getting stuff for free over dial-up, which was like NetZero and AOL, until I got dedicated dial-up from an internet provider at the time, and I still have an email address through them. Finally got high-speed cable, got into Unreal Tournament, and got picked up to be on a team in Unreal Tournament from being playing very, very good domination in several ET99 domination servers, one of which was White Lion, and that got me into organized gaming, or competitive gaming. Then went on to do UT2K3, UT2K4, started adminning several ladders for those games, like at ProvenGrounds.com, which is now defunct, IGL, and then later Team Warfare. Got into Halo PC and was competitive on Halo for the PC version, and then from there did a lot of betas. I had a group of friends that we had kind of stuck together, and we had done the Guild Wars 2 beta, and then we moved on to the WoW beta, and that became probably the biggest game of my entire gaming career, dating back to the Ataris and the Commodores and everything like that. WoW pretty much is been a nearly daily occurrence in my life since 2004, and I've been leading a clan and a guild ever since then. In late Wrath and early Cataclysm of World of Warcraft, I started seeking out a lot of betas all the time. I was just constantly getting into betas and doing videos on them for my channel. And one of the betas that I did was Marvel Avengers Alliance. I encountered it by watching a show on G4 TV called X-Play, and that's where Justin was talking about this game being in beta on Facebook. I signed up for it. I got the X-Play X gadget, which I was one of the only people that I really ever knew. By the way, look at all these quick actions here. This is pre-QA nerf, which, as you can see, I'm just taking turn after turn or action after action over here. So I got the X-Play gadget, which you only got if you were part of the beta, and I honestly did not really ever meet anybody who had it. Maybe one person on the wiki said they had it, but like I never saw it in anybody's video. I never saw anybody talking about it or using it. And there it is, max level 14. Tells you how old this is. And this is getting into the part where a lot of you guys know, if you've been watching my channel over the last few years, Kingfisher and CJ really helped me get used to the game in the very, very beginning, especially in PvP when I was absolute trash at it. They both put out some pretty good PvP videos at the time, and overall Kingfisher's knowledge was very good, and much like having a guitar mentor, a guitar mentor for learning guitar in different styles and everything, his Black Bolt and Thing video of Thing is invincible in PvP, that's the defining video for me that got me into doing Marvel Avengers Alliance videos. And I would eventually, right around the time of the Chase Spec Ops, I streamed what I would imagine was going to be the last hour or two before I got Chase. And that was a weekend that I decided to... Wow, that's a big hit point differential between these teams. I streamed that on Twitch, and that's kind of what gave me the bug to start adding streaming of Marvel Avengers Alliance to my repertoire, and that helped drive up the YouTube content a little bit. Oof. Ooh. Poor Hybrid's getting trounced over there. That's the Neuro Purge that you see me using. That was one of my favorite items for a long, long time. That Man Vitara is a little bit time displaced over there. This was not when the Man Vitara was very popular in PvP at all, but I was using it for the opportunistic debuffs, which sets up anti-venom. That's why you see me having it. And it was supposed to not get protected against. However, we would go on to see several times in this video the Man Vitara was protected against, even though it shouldn't have been. I don't know why. And yeah, that was pretty much it. And of course, when the game died in 2016, I never really found my true magnetic north. Since then, I was doing a lot of Heroes of the Storm in the beginning. I just never encountered another game that wanted to pull videos out of me, and the in-depth analysis and the crazy setup of teams and everything the way Marvel Avengers Alliance did. I mean, a lot of, Marvel Future Fight teams are spelled out for you. Marvel Strike Force is kind of getting that way, where you run Defender teams, or you run Mutant teams, or you run Shield teams with Fury and everything like that. It probably isn't until the most recent Looney Tunes game that the ability to really think outside the box and make crazy shit happen has been a thing. Marvel Avengers Alliance did it best because the agent. I mean, all of the fun things in the world that you can do, everything is anchored by the agent, and gear comes into play. So it's not just the characters you went into combat with, it's also the gear. And then later the ISOs that really made a difference. So that's a little bit of my background there. And now we're going to go ahead and get into the real meat of the video. So back when GLB was around, Gaming Life Beginner, who was the first person to work on bringing the game back, I wanted to get this guy on Twitch and have an active interview with him. Have the community in there watching the interview and just asking questions. Huge hit from Anti-Venom, by the way. And just kind of go through and ask questions and everything like that. And or just do it on the YouTube video. And then a couple people were like, oh, you should do it on Twitch. And I admit, generally when it comes to this content of Marvel Avengers Alliance, I've historically been an extremely nice guy and above the table, and I respond to everybody in the comments that I can. When there was a few people who were like, hey, you should do it on Twitch and make it active and everything, there was a part of me went, no, I want this all to myself. This is my idea. I want to do it myself. I don't want everybody else to be able to. Like, it was like all like very get off my lawn kids moment over there. I was like, no, I was very, very selfish. It never came to pass because GLB obviously disappeared and he didn't have good net anyway. He was stealing it from his neighbor, so it never happened. So this has been a dream of mine for some time, to ask questions of the person developing the game. And right now that's Goofy, and I sent him some questions tonight with his permission. And I gave him a variety of questions. They're not all softball questions, but they're not all like, this is hard-hitting fake news bullshit or something like that. It's a variety of questions along the way, and I have my questions and his responses here. So let's go ahead and get into them. The first thing they'll be saying in each sequence is the question, and then we'll have Goofy's answer. So the first question I asked is, how long ago did you start getting into coding? Not the game, just coding in general, the background knowledge of it. He said, my initial foray into programming was on the Apple IIe and the Commodore 64 in around 1984. Been programming on and off since then. My first class was in BASIC in 1985 for the Apple IIe, and I've been taking odd and end classes ever since in several languages. So the reason why I was introducing myself for a little bit is I was establishing some similar patterns between myself and Goofy. Goofy is considerably older than I thought he would be. He's actually more my age, and if not even a little bit older. And hearing the Commodore 64 and the Apple IIe and everything, that's why I wanted to give my backstory a little bit, because it really does sync up with his quite a bit. I didn't pursue programming. I pursued a different avenue of tech, and I actually pursued public relations. I was not really supposed to be in the job field that I'm in now. It was completely by accident that it happened. I initially was public relations or communications. So I said, how progressed, so this is my next question, how progressed were you in Marvel Avengers Alliance? Meaning, at the time the game died, how far along were you? For me, my basis of comparison was I had completed the game. They gave us so much stuff down the stretch over there at the end. All the leveling I wanted to do was done. I'd achieved adamantium status for many, many times. Oof, twisted gift. Something you don't see every day. And he's got a Nora Perch too. Many, many times by the time the game ended, I had been adamantium, even cleared 2000 in rank several times. So I got done everything that I wanted to do in the game. So to that question, Goofy said, not very far. I had maybe half the characters, never hit level 300, started around 509. Oh, SO9, excuse me. Started around Spec Ops 9. Wonder Man was my first SO character, my first Spec Ops character. So he didn't finish Super Spartan. And that goes to show you Goofy's intense love of the game, because, you know, he's not somebody like a lot of us that just finished completely over the top with what we had done in the game. Especially with all that extra stuff down the stretch. Like, a lot of us just didn't even have anything left to do. We'd gotten even our White Tigers and our Ronins and our Adam Warlocks and our Phyla-Vel and all of that completely capped out, because the game just flung stuff at us at the end. So it goes to show you that here's somebody who maybe has a great deal of drive. Excuse me, it's a little late, so I'm yawning. It has a great deal of drive to get the game back up, because now it gives them a chance to finish it. So that is really cool. I just noticed the lockboxes in the upper right. I'm not too sure what lockbox that is. It's not Juggernaut, even though it has Juggernaut's colors. I don't remember offhand what maybe it's hybrid. Maybe they were hybrid boxes. I don't remember if hybrid boxes were red. So, my next question, what made you decide to try and find the code for Marvel Avengers Alliance? This was a bit of a loaded question. I happen to know the answer to a certain degree. I knew part of the answer to this one, but I had to ask it, because this wasn't just me asking for me. I was trying to ask things you guys would be interested in. Oh, the Spirit Edge. I see the Spirit Edge at the bottom. Yay, look at all those soldering irons. There's my scroll of Angelob. So, he said, initially I was searching for a game that compared to Marvel Avengers Alliance. And I came across meaning my videos, about Gaming Life Beginner's version in January of 2018. That's really specific. Like, we've had this discussion before, and he mentioned that my videos were part of the instigating factor in this, but he remembers like the date. So a year ago, almost to the day, is when he encountered my videos about GLB trying to get the game back up, and it sparked a bit of a chord in him. So he says, continuing, I quickly joined the Discord and started looking into writing Season 3. So that's pretty cool too. Aside from being a coder, he was a writer at some point over there. So that's a pretty well-rounded person that we have helming this project. Thorny, that's a rare item. I love that item, and not a lot of people had it. That was also one of those ones that I felt proud about having. So in January, February, Agent Raygun came across the original code and assets. And this was, I didn't know this part over here, and I've been wondering about this myself, and I'm sure a lot of other people are like, how did he ever get the code? So Raygun got it and the assets, and he gave it to Goofy Troll. He said, I quickly started messing with the assets and released a recolored version of the Invisible Woman sprite on February 17th. I started messing with the generic combat system while waiting for the release of Gaming Life Beginner's version. So right early on, Goofy was working his own version of it, which is really, really good, and we'll see why. Releasing a video of the combat in March. Now, he did do a lot of videos on his channel for some time showing, his progress in work. And that's how I had approached GLB in terms of doing videos and everything about it. So let me find something else. So, part 1 of a series. Alright, we'll do PvP Season 29, first look. And we'll have this as the background video over here. So, he said, continuing again, the release date came and went, and I decided with the encouragement of Raygun to start looking at programming it for real, and I've been working on it ever since. So, those of us who know Agent Raygun, he is a huge factor in this, and had Raygun not been the person that he was, he might not have been able to convince Goofy to do the work and everything. So, cheers to Agent Raygun. You are probably one of the fathers of this project, and might not even know it. So my next question, what would you consider the hardest part about getting this game back to what we knew, parentheses 2016? Hey, Spirit Edge, and there's Cloak and Dagger. So 29 was Cloak and Dagger season. Who knew that that would give us one of the strongest characters? So he said, easily this is the statuses. This is the hardest part that I find about getting the game back up and running. Every time I think I've got one working, it seems to break down and something else breaks. So he's basically saying that statuses, bleeding, opportunistic, pressure points, buffs, these are all things he finds tough to work with. And I can understand that, because if you've watched the alphas, they kind of come and go a little bit. They'll like work, and then they won't work, and then they work again. So I can understand how he feels the statuses are an issue. And I said, for the next question over here, I'd imagine it'd be tough to get progression saved without the game, quote-unquote, calling home like it used to. Is it easy to fool the game into looking locally for your current progress? So obviously, everything when the game was live was account-based, and it talked to your account on the PlayDom servers. When you logged in, excuse me, I'm holding back yawns as much as I can here. It was my girlfriend's birthday today, so we've just been out and about all day catching Pokemon and having dinner and everything. First time I ate Indian food, by the way. So the it always talked, whether you were on the Playdom version or the Facebook version, it always checked in and said, "Hey, Playdom servers, um, what does Napalm Dawn's account look like? What gear does he have? What characters and everything?" And I would imagine that it might be kind of tough to fool the game to not look on a server. In other words, strip out all of the server contact code, which was probably tied to an IP address. It probably said, "Hey, check this IP address, log in, and get the data." And he said, "There are several pretty simple ways to do this. Flash has a save local object that could easily save the material, but this limits saves to one computer." So in other words, just so you know, you're not going to have cloud saves on this, because we are not hosting your data in a cloud. There is also writing to a file in the program folder. This will allow moving the save to other computers with ease, but will cause problems with possible corruption and will require more work. So, in the future, when you do get a hold of this game and there is savable progression, I highly encourage that maybe once every few days, at least on the order of once a week, you take your existing save and back it up to a safe place, just to be sure. I'm sure Goofy will tell us that file and where it is, and Red She-Hulk, or Red She-Hulk. I was never really that impressed with her. I thought she was okay at best, and God, there's Cammy. Fuck Cammy. But there's Electro above Cloak and Dagger. He was very good. Lizard and Craven were pretty decent too. So, yeah. We'll probably know when the game does get progression. It will get told where the file is, and wherever that file gets saved on a one-on-one basis with the game, I would highly recommend you take a copy of that game and put it somewhere else. Next question. Are there any changes you'd really like to make to the game? Parentheses, if it was up to you and not the committee. So this question means if there was no check and balance, what would Goofy like to do in terms of changing the game? We have elected a committee so that Goofy is not Lord and Savior, judge and jury all at once. In other words, President Trump. We wanted to decentralize that power so that he can't just like push an agenda through. Like, this is my favorite thing ever. This will be in the game. I mean, ultimately, Goofy, if he wanted to, could trump any one of us, no pun intended, and just be like, no, I'm going to put this in the game because I'm coding it. But obviously, he's going to let essentially a council or a board of directors help him out with that. And his answer is only the nerfing of a couple of characters. The other is the super heroic mode already in the works, making the game harder and with time limits. So that's a mode that the community is working on to present a high degree of challenge. If you are a World of Warcraft player, that would be akin to like Mythic Raiding or Mythic Dungeons. And he says, only nerfing of the couple of characters. This one scares me a little bit because there has been a recent rash in the community of saying how much they hated certain characters and they should have been nerfed. Now, I will take any criticism of White Tiger and Adam Warlock as they were clearly never meant to be balanced in the game or enter PvP. But when I hear people talking about nerfing some characters, they always say the Worthy, Kurth and Null, and Cloak and Dagger, and Faiza, or not Faiza, yes, Faiza Hussein. I was thinking Phyla-Vell for a second. Phyla-Vell was okay, but I mean, the last two or three needed to be put in check because they were not meant to live in a really living game. But like Cloak and Dagger that you see on the screen, Null, Kurth, like I don't want them touched because I don't think that's really fair to the spirit of the game. And while there is a vocal set of people that are like, oh, they were awful, and I always hated fighting them, and they would just couldn't get past them, there was a large amount of the community that found a way of working around it, and it didn't bother them anymore. And if you were to poll people, like what camp has more people, the nerf certain characters camp of like the Worthy and blah blah blah, compared to the people who just want to leave it alone, I think that would be an interesting poll. I'm of the the thought of leave most of the cast alone for what, except for whatever occurred in mid 2016. And maybe even Ronan. I've heard some people Ronan should get a nerf. I don't believe that one too much, but it has been a long time since I've seen Marvel Avengers Alliance and Ronan. But I did use him, and I think I even did videos on him. And he was good, but he wasn't that good. But yeah, I am a little scared when somebody would want to nerf characters that are not obviously like the last two or three. And my next question, are there any Marvel stories or plots you'd really like to see in the game? And his response is, you sure you're going to want to ask this? Okay, here it goes. Age of Apocalypse, Coming of Galactus, Atlantis Attacks, the Demon Bear Saga, Flanks Covenant, Kree Skrull War, just to name a few. So I know Kree Skrull War was, I think, fairly strong in Marvel Heroes and drove a lot of that plot. And we all know Age of Apocalypse. The rest of them I'm not as familiar with because I didn't read a lot of the comics. Sue me, and I apologize, but this looks like one of the seasons towards the end where I went back to Psylocke, X-Force, and Archangel X-Force and everything. I find it funny this team came and got me through PvP in two very different eras, and the team you see on the screen right now, like, they were able to stay in place and the meta grew up around them and left them untouched because of their X-Force synergy. But I missed this team. This was a very, very fun team, and like whoever ran Archangel at the end of the game, I mean, this would be laughable if you saw this. You're like, what the hell is this guy doing? But I had a plan and it worked. Since you can, this is my next question. Since you can likely answer this now without consequence, do you feel that Gaming Life Beginner's attempt at the game was a bamboozle, or just somebody who fell upon some poor luck? And he said, I can easily see it being someone who fell on hard luck. I just had a small spell of it myself. He could have also easily just become overwhelmed with trying to do it. So Goofy gives a very PC answer over here, and I don't think it's like fake or the nice answer at all. I think he's coming from a place of, you know, I get it. This is rough shit going on over here, and for Gaming Life Beginner to say he had, you know, some issues where he was the only one who could work in his house that was dedicated to giving money back to the house. When he had a sister who was pregnant, and he had several people in the house that could not work. He had a fairly believable story that he just couldn't find the time to work the game anymore, and he was taking internet from a neighbor, which was a little bit shoddy. So there was proof there that he, you know, definitely could be, if it wasn't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. However, there's also still a reasonable amount of doubt that he ever was really doing it to begin with. Oh, look at that nasty defense over there with a lunacy. Oof. This is a douchey defense I have up there. Anyway, you know, what he had out could have been easily done in Photoshop, and he never really showed any progress at all. I mean, we don't know how much further with the game he had gotten by the time Goofy stepped up and became the main dev on it over here. He might have only done 2 hours worth of work in all of that time. We don't know. And I did do a video right when he said he wasn't going to be able to work it anymore. Like, was it a bamboozle or not? How should you feel? And, you know, in all honesty, a lot of stuff could have happened to him, and that's the stance that Goofy's taking. He's not like, oh man, you know, obviously this guy was bullshit from the beginning. He's saying, yeah, certainly could happen, and that he had lived through it. I can say this because he put it out publicly in Discord. The reason why Goofy had disappeared for a while is, among other things, the government furlough that is occurring in the United States, of where essentially the government is on strike because of not liking a few things the president is doing. And this is, of course, the longest government shutdown we have had in our history, and that shutdown did affect Goofy, at least in some way, and it's heartbreaking to hear that, because it has become a very, very big thing in the States, and you have certain cities and states that are trying to help people out with this problem, even though they're not supposed to. So, my next question. When you see... So, oh yeah, to sum it up again, he doesn't believe it was a bamboozle. He believes it was a guy who fell on some hard times. My next question. When you see all the admiration for this project and your work so far, how do you feel? And he said, I'm always amazed by all the positive response to my work. I never got much praise when I was a kid, and it's kind of overwhelming at times. But it makes me want to get more done for you guys, for sure. So he's a man who's not out for the glory, and it is almost shocking and unnerving him that he's seeing so much support for it, and that he's the one working on it, because he's just not used to that level of people like, you're doing an awesome job and it's so great, I'm so happy it's coming back, and blah blah blah. You may think that sounds like a generic compliment, but when you are the person who is working the code, and you have essentially somebody saying, yo, you are doing the Lord's work, to coin a phrase, that can mess with your mind a little bit. I mean, look at Dave Chappelle. Everybody told him he was great, and hey, everybody's talking about your skits and everything at the water cooler the next day at work. You're reaching color people of all colors and ages and sexes and everything like that. And it sort of blew Dave Chappelle up a little bit, which is why he retreated for many, many years. And he's also a WoW player. Huh. So, yeah, admiration and all the glory definitely does weed him out a little bit. And clearly Goofy is not in this for the glory. He's not a glory hog. So my next question. Around the holidays, you had some time off the net. Did you start worrying that people were freaking out, thinking history was repeating itself? Like I said in the beginning video, some of these questions make him think, but are, relatively innocuous questions. This one I knew was stronger than any of the other ones that I asked, but I was curious to his response, or if he'd even heard that were like, where's the progress on the game? Like, what's happening? Where did Goofy go? We can't find him. So his response was, unfortunately, I live a ways out of town, and had no way of communicating what was happening. I am very dedicated to this project, just for pure love of the game, so I didn't want people to start questioning that. So, yeah, he had some issues working on the game for a little while, but clearly he's back, and he does it's a pretty good response over here. He's not like letting GLB have it and everything like that, and he's being humble about it all, which is very good. To me, one of my last questions over here, so we'll get through this pretty quick. To me, it seems like new sprites and animations would be tough to create from scratch. Do you think this is the hardest part to work on outside of your own coding? So if he was one man shopping this, would he be able to take community ideas for sprites and animations and create them? Now, I wasn't asking would he do it, because if he's coding, I don't think he would have the time to create sprites and characters and everything and do all of this coding. And yeah, he had no real way of communicating what was happening, but he obviously was not going for a bamboozle. He just had some issues. To me, it seems like new sprites and animations would be tough to create from scratch. Do you think this is the hardest part to work on outside of your own coding? So, coming up with original artwork in Marvel Avengers Alliance that looks good and not tacked on. All the work is hard, he said. To me, the story is a lot harder because I'm an artist. I have taken classes in Flash and animation, so that helps. The hardest may actually be getting the character info into XMLSs, which is a file type that we're going to talk a little bit about. If you could help, if you could get help coding, what would somebody need to do to help? And he said, just get a hold of me in Discord. A knowledge of Flash and ActionScript is a plus but not needed. Sado, who worked on different modules like team management, learned from a couple quick tutorials I wrote for him. XML knowledge is extremely useful. So he believes here that he could kind of train somebody to help him out a little bit. But I was asking, like, if somebody sprung up that knew code well and wasn't just trying to write or do pictures, could Goofy get a partner in this or an assistant of some sorts? And it seems like potentially the answer is yes, and that person would have enough work to keep them busy for now and in a maintenance mode. What images aside from Flash is the engine being built with? So, asking somebody who's working in the engine and with Flash, and you say, hey, what's a good alternative? They're going to get it. They're not going to be like, well, do you mean this or that or blah, blah, blah. They just give you something solid over there. And it's interesting to hear XML ranked so high and not others that I would expect, like, aside from Flash and everything, there are other languages. C+. I thought really that was going to be C+, to be honest. Since asking for specifics is not something we would do right now, so this is basically saying, hey, Goofy, when's the alpha, when's the beta, when's progression, tell us. This is what people need to avoid highly. And since asking for specifics is not something we do right now, what do you envision is Marvel 2's timeline for 2019? So this is generic and open. It's not as specific as people would want, but I did that for a reason, just so he would feel comfortable answering that. And he said, I would like to get into the beta stage by the end of the year. I hope to get a smooth, readily available release schedule for alphas, although I may put one off to get something working. So he's saying that you could go somewhere and get the update as a zip file, or potentially from a bird swap. Birds fly out, you have your birds leave, they get picked up, go back to where they were. And then, yeah, interesting response on this one. Carrier pigeon mode over here. When the game ended in 2016, how did you feel, and did you ever think about you'd be in a spot to help the game come back? So I was like, what was it like in 2016 when you felt the game was dying, and could you, in your wildest dreams, have predicted you would be one of the people responsible for people playing it again? And he said, I was extremely disappointed. It was the only game besides a couple fantasy sports games that I played online. I didn't think I could have ever done it even this much, though I'm very glad I can. Next question. Are any similar games you got into when Are there any similar games that you got into where MAA died? So I was looking for kind of like mobile but not specifically mobile, because you could imagine a game similar to this being on like Steam and whatnot. But like, what games of the genre did you wind up playing? And I got back Fable, Final Fantasies 7 through 9, Star Wars, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and X-Men Legends. So he definitely did get into a few things and sounded like he was trying hard to consume Marvel content since MAA had died, and I have done that too. A lot of people often approach me about donating to me, meaning me, Napalm Dawn, and want to donate to me or the development of the game. We obviously both would never take a dime, but I have an idea that might work out. Have people who want to give to me for the videos, or you for, you know, the work that you're doing in the dinner, submit it as a donation to the High Functioning Autism Fund, which is here in Raleigh, but it's having some problems getting set up and ran into some snags in Australia, or let's see, where is it? Yeah, I think that might be where it was. But anyway, the meat of the question is, he does have a charity that if you're like, hey, I want to pay you for doing this game, this is really, really great, you can just go ahead and cut a check to your post office, especially around Christmas time. And finally, thank you for your time, Goofy. Is there anything else you'd like the public to know that I didn't cover? And he said, I would want people to know that I appreciate the confidence you've all shown in me, and if anyone has access to the XML files 1001 through 1018, they are waiting or willing to share it, could you please share it? It'd be a major help. Thank you for taking the time to ask. So we are still missing some of the XMLs that we need in the game, and it's a pretty good chunk of them, and since it's beginning related, it has a lot of useful information in there. So I do apologize for being ridiculously tired on this one. I feel as if I veered into some weird corners, and I thought I maybe just didn't drag myself out of. I was tired, I was yawning. It is definitely time for bed, but I wanted to make the video before I went to bed. So there is the interview with Goofy. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them below. And typical of everybody else, if you like the content that is happening over here, give a like and subscribe. Everything always helps, especially when a lot of us were demonetized. When Marvel Avengers Alliance went under, we were given maybe like 2 or 3 months. I'm like, okay, demonetization time. You're just not doing what you used to do. So yeah, really excited Goofy's back. Really excited I was able to ask a lot of these questions and get them answered. There are some technical ones that I didn't want to get into. Like, I didn't want to really narrow him down to a day on it, you know, an hour of a minute of a day. And be like, okay, this is going to be done, that's going to be done. Just a general timeline is what I'm going for. This way we could still be pleasantly surprised when he's ahead of schedule and we get something we've been waiting for early, which is always a good thing. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Probably quite a boring one, but one that dealt with a lot of topics that I just wanted to share with you guys, including some automatic answers to what is going to happen. So, peace out, everybody. Have a good one.